The night of the 22nd and 23rd of July, 1944. Soldiers of the Red Army come upon Majdanek, the first major Nazi camp to be liberated, located in German-occupied Poland. This event becomes one of the most significant moments in the history of World War II and the Holocaust, as only after the liberation of the concentration camps, the full extent of Nazi crimes is finally exposed to the world. Soviet officials invite journalists to inspect the camp and to see for themselves the evidence of the horrors that have occurred there. As Allied troops move across Europe against Nazi Germany in 1944 and 1945, they encounter concentration camps, mass graves, and other sites of Nazi crimes. Among them is Auschwitz, the largest of the extermination centers located in German-occupied Poland, which the Soviet forces liberate on the 27th of January, 1945. It is estimated that a minimum of 1.3 million people were deported to this camp between 1940 and 1945, and of these, at least 1.1 million were murdered. One of the perpetrators responsible for these atrocities is Detlef Nebbe. Detlef Nebbe was born on the 20th of June 1912 in Husum, then part of the German Empire. The First World War started when Detlef was only 2 years old. After its end on the 11th of November 1918, Germany experienced great political turmoil. The 1919 Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh terms on Germany, which had lost the war. In addition, the country saw the overthrow of its monarchy. In its place was the new Weimar Republic, a democratic government. Racist and anti-Semitic groups sprang up on the radical right, and they blamed Jews for Germany's defeat in the war. These groups opposed the Weimar Republic and the Treaty of Versailles. They were against democracy, human rights, capitalism, socialism, and communism. They advocated to exclude anyone who did not belong to the German race from German life. During these difficult times, Nebbe completed his 7 years of schooling and became a salesman by trade. Between 1930 and 1933, the mood in Germany was grim, and the world economic crisis had hit the country hard, putting millions of people out of work. The unemployed were joined by millions of others who linked the Great Depression to Germany's national humiliation after defeat in the First World War. Many Germans perceived the parliamentary government coalition as weak and unable to ease the economic crisis. Widespread economic misery, fear, and a perception of worse times to come, as well as anger and impatience with the apparent failure of the government to manage the crisis, offered fertile ground for the rise of Adolf Hitler and his Nazi Party. Hitler was a powerful and spellbinding orator, who by tapping into the anger and helplessness felt by a large number of voters, attracted a wide following of Germans desperate for change. Nazi electoral propaganda promised to pull Germany out of the Depression. The Nazis pledged to restore German cultural values, reverse the provisions of the Treaty of Versailles, turn back the perceived threat of the communist uprising, put the German people back to work, and restore Germany to its rightful position as a world power. In January 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany, and the same month, Detlef Nebbe joined the SS. Following his appointment as Chancellor, Hitler began laying the foundations of the Nazi state. In the first 2 years of his chancellorship, political parties, state governments, and cultural and professional organizations were brought in line with Nazi goals. Culture, the economy, education, and law all came under Nazi control. German authorities began eliminating Jews from governmental agencies and state positions in the economy, law, and cultural life. The Nazi government abolished trade unions, and workers, employees, and employers were forced into the Nazi-controlled National Labor Organization, named the German Labor Front. The Reichstag, the German parliament, transferred legislative power to Hitler's cabinet and thus lost its reason to exist. By mid-July, the Nazi Party was the only political party left in Germany. Detlef Nebbe joined the Nazi Party in 1937, and in September 1939, after completing military training, he was drafted into the Waffen-SS, which was the military branch of the SS. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939 when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. The German invasion of France, Belgium, Luxembourg and the Netherlands started on the 10th of May 1940 and became known as the Battle of France. Initially, British and French commanders had believed that German forces would attack through central Belgium as they had done in World War I, and rushed forces to the Franco-Belgian border to meet the German attack. The main German attack, however, went through the Ardennes forest in southeastern Belgium and the northern part of Luxembourg, and German tanks and infantry quickly broke through the French defensive lines and advanced to the coast. Belgium and the Netherlands surrendered in May 1940. Between the 26th of May and the 4th of June 1940, more than 300,000 French and British troops were evacuated from the beaches near Dunkirk across the English Channel to Great Britain. Paris, the French capital, fell to the Germans on the 14th of June 1940. On the 22nd of June of the same year, France signed an armistice with Germany, which went into effect on the 25th of June 1940. During the French campaign, Detlef Nebbe was wounded, and on the 15th of October 1940, he was assigned to Auschwitz. The following month, he was promoted to the rank of SS Unterscharführer, which was equivalent to sergeant. From 1939, the SS assumed responsibility for solving the so-called Jewish question, which then culminated in 1941 when the leadership planned, coordinated, and directed the so-called final solution. This solution was the genocide of European Jews during World War II, also known as the Holocaust. SS officers were directly responsible for the management of concentration camps, where millions of Jews were murdered by poison gas. From February 1941, Detlef Nebbe served at Auschwitz as a guard. An intimidating figure among SS men in his company, he was renowned as a devout Nazi and would abuse prisoners by beating them defiantly. He also demonstrated to his colleagues how to behave towards prisoners. Nebbe was a training instructor for people from various countries, such as from Croatia, who were chosen for the SS. He treated the prisoners brutally, and he often beat and kicked the prisoners for no reason, so the prisoners would always try to give him a wide berth. Allegedly, Nebbe was also behind the organization of nightly shootings for his colleagues, in which prisoners served as targets. At Auschwitz, Detlef Nebbe became notorious for abusing prisoners for the most trivial offenses. For example, he kicked a prisoner who was assigned to clean the camp's headquarters just for the fact that some carpet was not clean, as he'd found a stain on it. He was very harsh towards prisoners, especially to two Soviet prisoners whom he could not understand, and whom he frequently beat for this reason. After the war, Stanislaw Malinsky, a former Auschwitz prisoner who had worked in an officer's canteen as a kitchen helper, recalled the following. "He beat me up 3 times. The first time was for walking into his room where he ate his dinners, because I wanted to take the plate away to the dining area after dinner, as I was going to be busy later. He apparently beat me for walking into his room while he wasn't there. He hit me in the face with his hands several times. The second time I got beaten up was for smoking cigarettes during working hours in a corridor at the command's barrack. He beat me up the third time for no reason while he was drunk. I also heard that while he was conducting exercises near the prisoner's workplace, he would allegedly beat and kick these prisoners, supposedly for working incorrectly." In September 1943, Detlef Nebbe reached the rank of SS Hauptscharführer, or head squad leader. For his service, he was not only promoted, but he was also awarded the War Merit Cross Second Class with Swords in September 1943. Jerzy Fliegel, who was imprisoned in the Auschwitz camp from January 1943 until the evacuation of the camp in January 1945, described Detlef Nebbe's role in the events of autumn 1943. The so-called Standgericht, summary court, came to Auschwitz at the time, resulting in the shooting of over 100 people on the grounds of the old camp crematorium. The SS men who surrounded the place of execution so that none could escape were led by Nebbe. From late spring 1944, he served at a Wehrmacht coordination office in Auschwitz, which was responsible for the integration of soldiers who were unfit for combat at the front into the Guard troops. At least 500 former soldiers were incorporated into the SS in Auschwitz. They were mostly older, sickly soldiers who were no longer up to the rigors of the front. Many were pleasantly different from the members of the SS, although not all of them. From the 17th to the 21st of January 1945, about 56,000 prisoners of both sexes were led out of Auschwitz and its subcamps under the escort of heavily armed SS troops. On the 27th of January 1945, when the soldiers of the 60th Army of the First Ukrainian Front opened the gates of Auschwitz concentration camp, about 7,000 prisoners awaited liberation in the Auschwitz main camp, Birkenau, and Monowitz. Historians estimate that around 1.1 million people perished in Auschwitz during the less than 5 years of its existence. The majority, around 1 million people, were Jews. After the end of the war, Nebbe had to finally face justice and pay for his crimes. He was captured by the British troops and in 1945 was extradited to Poland, where he was tried at the Auschwitz trial, which began on the 24th of November 1947 and lasted 1 month. For his crimes, on the 22nd of December 1947, the Polish Supreme National Tribunal in Krakow sentenced Nebbe to life imprisonment. However, due to amnesty, he was released on the 23rd of October 1956, after spending only 11 years in prison. In the 1960s, he even acted as a witness during the Auschwitz trial in Frankfurt. When Nebbe died on the 17th of April 1972 in Kiel, he was 59 years old. There were no tears shed for Detlef Nebbe.
Thanks for watching the World History channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.